Hey everybody, this is John the Other, obviously. And I'm doing this introduction on camera. The rest of this I'm just going to read. So, you get to look at, something. I'll put it on screen. Let's begin. So as many people listening to this already know, Jian Ghomeshi is the former CBC star who was accused of various sexual assaults through social media, through mainstream media, and finally after police begged his media accusers to pursue their criminal accusations properly through the courts or the police. Finally, after about 18 months of public slander of Mr. Ghomeshi, he was finally charged by the Crown for sexual assault against 4 complainants. And he was acquitted, based on the blatant lying of the complainants against him in court, lying under oath, based on the collaboration of the complainants against him, based on the deliberate deception by the complainants of the prosecution and the police. So because his accusers were a bunch of liars, perjurers, and collaborators, Mr. Ghomeshi was acquitted. And none of those accusers can reasonably be taken seriously by the media or the public, again, because they are a collaborating pack of liars who made a mockery of the criminal court, made a mockery of the Toronto police, and made the Ontario prosecutor's office all look like a bunch of bumblefuck idiots. And the judge, the police department, and the Crown prosecution all have a right to be individually very angry with those lying and collaborating accusers, even though the police and the prosecution and the judge really couldn't have done very much differently. The police and the Crown prosecution do not have any mandate to treat criminal accusers as fraudsters lying to the police so that cops doing their job will act as muscle in the harassment and the persecution of an individual falsely accused of a crime on spurious grounds. Indeed, now that Mr. Ghomeshi has been found not guilty, with that verdict based on the lying under oath of his accusers, those individuals have each issued many statements that they were not adequately informed by the police or by the Crown of their duty to tell the truth, nor their duty to not withhold information, and the police and the Crown are being quite widely abused and insulted in mainstream media for this claimed failure. But this narrative, from a collection of complainants who each lied repeatedly while under oath, and who lied in their depositions, and who withheld critical elements of their stories from the Crown prosecution, and who are now known to be liars, are you seeing a theme here? Are also now being lionized by the mainstream media as so-called survivors, and repeatedly insulting and defaming the same police they previously duped and deceived, leading up to Mr. Ghomeshi's first trial, in which he was acquitted based on their lies. And I can't even tell you these criminal fraudsters and perjurers' names, because as so-called survivors, they are protected by the legal prohibition of publication of their names. Only Lucy Ducotier can have her name discussed in public in relation to this story, because her principal motivation appears to have been to revitalize her failed D-list acting career as the celebrity Beckham-type figure of the domestic violence industry, a business in which, according to a feminist scholar named Christina Hoff Sommers, false claims are not unusual, they are the norm. But it gets even more surreal than this. The other accusers of Mr. Ghomeshi, who can only be identified by their initials, have each given numerous public interviews in outlets including the CBC, Maclean's Magazine, Chatelaine, The Guardian, and particularly Canada's wannabe imitator of Gawker Media, a site called Canadaland run by Jesse Brown. We'll return to Jesse Brown shortly, as he is a bit of a central figure here. But in the post-trial interviews of these accusers, who have each been proven to have lied to the police, to the Crown, to the courts, and lied to the media, they are each being treated as victims, noble and long-suffering, and survivors to whom we should all listen and believe, despite the facts proven in court that they are not only each perjurers and liars under oath, and are, although not charged as such, all apparently criminal conspirators who together attempted to deceive the court, the prosecution, and the police. So, why does the mainstream media continue to treat these apparent criminals as heroes? And how is it that an apparently criminal conspiracy to defraud the police and the courts, used as a marketing tactic to personal fame, can be pursued with the continued advantage of the court's protection of legal prohibition of these fraudsters' and collaborators' names. How is this possible? We in Canada have a very robust system of courts, police, and prosecutors, but that system seems weirdly selective about adherence to the law. As well, there seems to be a great deal of confusion over who is a victim of a crime and who is a criminal when that crime happens to be criminal slander, criminal conspiracy, public mischief, or interference in a police investigation, or perjury, all of which the accusers of the now villainous Mr. Ghomeshi seem to have freely indulged in and, indeed, continue to indulge in. In fact, one of Mr. Ghomeshi's accusers appears to have been so busy that simultaneous to accusing Mr. Ghomeshi, she was also part of another group brigade accusation of sexual misconduct against another highly esteemed and accomplished Canadian who worked in the world of performing arts and photography, and that man's reputation also now lies in a ruin, despite the fact that what he was accused of was not a criminal offence. And I can't tell you his name because you could then determine who his accuser was and recognize her as one of Mr. Ghomeshi's accusers, which is the accusation for which she was shown to be a liar under oath, as well as for which she now enjoys publication ban on her name. And if I was careless enough to let slip her name, I would certainly receive a notice of my own criminal charge for violating the legal ban on the publication of a proven to be lying under oath false accuser's name. Does this sound bizarre to you? Because it does to me. But you know whose name is not under a publication ban? Stephanie Guthrie. For those who've forgotten, Guthrie is the woman who organized a slander and blacklist campaign and a vigilante brigade against the software and video game designer Bendelin Spur for his creation of a satirical face-punch video game mocking the known fraudster Anita Sarkeesian. Stephanie Guthrie is also the woman who told Judge Brent Nazan that she and her crew could do a better job of determining and delivering improvised justice than the Canadian courts could do. Although she didn't admit it in the court, her vigilantism is obviously made a little bit easier by her having friends inside the Toronto police force, which is likely a very difficult set of tensions within any law enforcement agency. And the Toronto police are in an almost impossible position now. The people they've abetted and assisted have been lying to them and using the power of the police to destroy the lives of an unknown number of Canadians. But the police and the courts are really just playing the role of janitor in what appears a cyclical, ongoing drama. And it is the media which is the preferred vehicle for public destruction of anyone who offends Canada's state religion of feminism. Which brings us back to Jesse Brown. He is the founder and the publisher of Canada's low-rent equivalent to Gawker Media, a site and a podcast called Canadaland. Mr. Brown appears to have been the originator of a long-standing campaign against CBC's former star Mr. Jian Ghomeshi, but not because Brown had any particular axe to grind against Ghomeshi, only because at the CBC, Ghomeshi was a star and Brown was out. Jesse Brown hates the CBC for not making him their icon. Jesse Brown also appears to have solicited accusations against Mr. Ghomeshi and acted as a networking hub for Ghomeshi's accusers. If the police or the courts wanted to make a legal example of somebody defrauding the courts for personal gain, fame, and the elevation of fake victims into public esteem as heroic survivors, a subpoena of Mr. Brown's email and message traffic of the last 4 years might be a good place to start. Hi Jesse, I hope you're listening. It is also Jesse Brown who, while promoting himself as a watchdog for the integrity of Canada's journalism community, said on his own podcast that fact-checking is tedious, time-consuming, and unnecessary, and that the public is the best fact-checker. Except, how can you check the facts in a public smear campaign against a known person like Jian Ghomeshi when all the accusers are held in anonymity by the so-called journalist, Jesse? And they have been anonymous in all of Jesse Brown's coverage of Jian Ghomeshi's public pillorying. How can you fact-check a source that Jesse Brown, a so-called journalistic watchdog, holds in secret from you? How can you fact-check an apparent collaboration between an apparently organized cabal of fraudsters who have lied under oath, who have lied in depositions to the police, who are protected by publication ban of their names, and who appear, to a close follower of what journalism on this matter has uncovered, appear to be the same group fielding multiple accusations against a growing number of targets and operating as an organization. How can you fact check any of that if mention of those who lie under oath in court results in criminal charges for violations of publication ban on their name? And hello to you too, Miss Guthrie. And to everybody else, thanks for listening, and no, I have not yet had time to make myself headgear or a hat from aluminum foil. I'll do that after uploading. So thank you all for your very kind attention, and as always, have a lovely, lovely day. So I guess there's one more thing I want to say. Everybody who has been following the Jian Ghomeshi case and all the coverage and all the interviews given by the so-called anonymous accusers, anybody following it closely knows who these people are. They know their names, but their names are under publication ban. So the publication ban, I'm not sure what the purpose of it is to keep them secret from the public, but they're not secret because they've gone and given interviews, and in some cases they've started businesses, you know, like grief counseling survivors or rape counseling businesses based on their association to the Ghomeshi case, and yet they're known to be fraudsters, and they're being interviewed, and they're known to be fraudsters, and we can't talk about them because there's a publication ban. I think the courts or maybe the police need to issue like a media pack of what you can say and under what circumstances you can say it, because the idea that these people are secret and not known is a ridiculous pile of nonsense. Anybody who's followed this knows who they are. I know who they are, and I'm not much of a researcher at all. I'm a software guy who happens to be skilled in looking things up on the internet. The really horrible idea, and this is the horrible tinfoil hat conspiracy idea that keeps coming into my head, and I don't want to believe it's true, is that this is an organized criminal enterprise of a bunch of people using fraudulent accusations to boost themselves and their colleagues up into fame, in this public esteem as some sort of weird victim/hero, and that the police and courts are in some weird way collaborating with this by preventing anybody from talking about it other than to say, "Oh, you poor little thing." That's the horrible idea. It's so outrageous, it's almost impossible, but that's what it looks like. Courts and police, if you're watching, we need a media pack of what we can say and what we can't. The idea that these people are not known is nonsense. Everybody knows. Anybody who's followed the coverage knows. Thanks very much for watching, and as always, have a lovely day.